On today's episode of Living Cosmos.
It's a man's job in his own body and life to liberate his former first wave model of masculinity. But in order to do that, he has to open his mind. He has to show up where it's painful, where he hasn't wanted to. In other words, it's a very deep, transformative process. This cannot just be philosophical.
Welcome to the Living Cosmos podcast. I'm your host, Matt Sturm. Our focus is on the questions, who am I and what is my place in the cosmos? This exploration is in service to understanding our true nature on our path toward human realization. Today, we recognize that the universe has been on a journey of evolution from undifferentiated particles into life, consciousness, and even podcasts. You and I are vastly interwoven into this living, breathing cosmos. Our stories of healing, awakening, and self-actualization are each threads in the evolutionary tapestry of the cosmos. So, center in yourself and join me for this transmission. Hi, friends. My name is Matt, and I'm very excited to introduce this special format podcast episode with a very dear friend and mentor of mine, Adam Gainsburg. I encountered Adam several years ago through his open heart work. It was profoundly transformational for me. He is a world-renowned astrologer, the founder of Soul Sign Astrology, and he's been a real ally for me in the men's work that I have stepped into recently. So he read and provided a review for the 2 books that I have published currently. This episode today is him interviewing me at right when my second book, Primal Drives, was about to release. And so in this episode, we're talking about Primal Drives and we're discussing the topics together. Enjoy.
So, Matt, let's talk about your second book. 400 pages.
Yeah. I didn't leave anything out.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
I read it, and I pulled out either sentences or a few string of sentences from your book.
Okay.
And what I want to do is I want to read them so that people watching or listening to this don't necessarily have to go get the book, but they will know by the end of this conversation if this book is for them. Beautiful.
Okay.
So I found something that was kind of near the end of the book that I want to kind of start with. I hope to create a vision for men's work that begins with ownership, that male violence and sexual abuse is a men's issue. In this sense, our processes represent a second wave of men's work. The first wave has focused on personal healing and growth. The second wave of men's work envisions liberating models of masculinity, freeing them. Because our process is about redefining masculinity as well as delegitimizing hegemonic masculinity, it is essentially a pro-feminist approach. Hearing that, does that still ring true?
Completely.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that is what this book is about.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I first learned about men's work many years ago from reading, as you quote him and honor him and praise him, Robert Bly's work, and then his contemporaries, Michael Meade, a couple of other guys. And that was where I discovered archetypes. That's where I discovered a whole different reference for my inner anger. I didn't have the word violence then, but my inner anger, my inner reactivity. Mm-hmm. This second wave that you talk about liberating models of masculinity. You make a great point. You make the point about this in a couple different places in the book about to do this. It's clearly a man's work. It's not a woman's or someone other identified. It's a man's job in his own body and life to liberate his former first wave model of masculinity. But in order to do that, he has to open his mind. He has to show up where it's painful, where he hasn't wanted to. In other words, it's a very deep, transformative process. This cannot just be philosophical.
Yeah.
When I read this sentence, Matt, redefining masculinity, I was like, oh, that's for me, as a reader of your book, that to me feels like what you're doing here.
Yes.
And can you talk a bit more about what does it look like? What's the scope of that? What does it require for a man to redefine masculinity for himself?
Sure. Okay. So there is an incredible tool that I discovered in researching this book that's used for racism work. It's applied to race primarily. It's called the Hardiman-Jackson Social Identity Development Model. And it talks about how we take a social identity and the kind of universal pathway that it traverses. And towards the top is redefinition. But before we get to redefinition, we need to understand where we came from. And so you're using this term redefinition, and that's really what this book is about, is redefining masculinity. So as a social construct, as something that was given to us by our culture, which is not the totality of what masculinity is, it's a part of it. We begin life totally naive. We don't have any sense of what it means to be male-bodied or masculine, our gender. We're just a human immersed in the world. And in the first few years of life, we start to receive this programming of here's your identity based on the body that you're in and how you look and the cultural context that surrounds you. And really, within the first few years of life, we are internalizing and then starting to operationalize. We're starting to behave within those rules unconsciously. And so that's called the acceptance phase, where this is just how things are. Oh, Matt, you're a man, you're white. Here are the rules that apply to you. They're different than the rules that apply to other people, to women, to people of color, etc. And that's just my reality. That's how things are. At a certain point on the path, we begin to start to see that there's a system here that's made out of human rules, and that we've been functioning within that system. And because we all created that system, it's not necessarily the only way things have to be. And in fact, that system doesn't work for a lot of people. It causes suffering and oppression and inequality. And so then we start to enter what's called the resistance phase. Hey, this thing that I've received, it doesn't feel like me. I don't like it. And the way that it's operating in the world doesn't seem that great. I'm going to push back. And so that's often characterized by a lot of reactivity. I don't like it. I'm kind of rebelling against the system and fighting against the structures. I'm deconstructing these social structures. So masculinity is definitely one of them. And if we keep going in that process, the question is, okay, we're deconstructing that identity that's been given to us. What's at the bottom of that? Is the bottom of that oblivion? Is there no identity? Or is there something real to masculinity that we can plant our feet in, plant a flag in? And this is where the archetypes come in for me, because masculinity for me is not simply a social construction. And this is really like crucial, because if it was only a social construction, And we look out and we see all of the harm and like baggage that masculinity carries with it. For a good chunk of my life, I was like, yeah, why would anybody choose to be masculine? It's just the social thing that's gone wrong. It's like a bug in our system. Archetypes are these universal patterns of meaning, and you know this as well as I do. They are these symbols that pervade our dream time, our myths and religions, and they influence all of us. And they go through every facet of the cosmos, again, in my view, as a pattern of meaning, a pattern of influence. And so for me, it's one of the primary dichotomies, masculine, feminine, light, dark, above, below, of how the universe is constructed. So we can't just get rid of masculinity. There's something real here to it, even though it's not materially measurable. We can't put a ruler on it. And so if there is something essential about masculinity, not only to human existence, but to the cosmos, then the question starts to look different. It's not how do we get rid of this thing that's causing suffering? It's what do we need to do to heal, grow, evolve, mature, work with this aspect of our existence? And then we get into redefinition. So the key point for redefinition and how I plug it into integral theory is when we step into the integral level of consciousness, we source from the wholeness of ourself. We find the center of me. And in that self-reference, I'm able to ask, okay, what is true about masculinity for me? My answer may be nothing. I actually feel more resonant as a non-binary person or as a woman. Like, there's no right answer to this except what is revealed by your heart. So for me, I went in, and when I went in, it was like, oh yeah, masculinity. There's a lot here for me that feels true. And then I get to redefine what that means from the wholeness of my adult self.
So several questions come up for me about this, Matt.
Right.
Taking in what you're saying, it may be that the way I use masculine is slightly different than how you use it, which is great. As you just shared, for you, masculinity, when you look inside, that it feels more than resonant. It feels true to identify as this. This is a part of my being and thus my path. Okay. For men who are taking this journey in their own way, what happens when a man finds, as you have, about that relationship with masculinity? What does that say about his relationship to femininity? Or does it say nothing at all?
Yeah. We all have all of the archetypes inside of us or outside of us influencing us in the collective unconscious, like however you want to, we're all connected to all of the archetypes. So really the question is, where do I want to place my identity? Do I want to identify my gender as masculine? Do I want my expression, which is how I'm received and related to in the world, to be masculine or not? And there comes an agency with that, a measure of choice. I can step into the feminine if I want, through my dress, through hormones, there's many methods, if that feels like that's the truest expression of me. And something that begins to happen here is we start to see that these are just kind of costumes that we get to wear and play with and enjoy.
Yes.
And we become less blended with I am man as man being the thing that identifies me. It's like one aspect of my being.
Right. A distinction I would make here is this is a costume that I get to play with and put on and take off when I want. But that truth, from my experience, is not the same as saying masculinity is a costume or femininity is a costume. Be, it, because whether I'm alive or not alive, or I'm alive in a different form, masculinity is. It's
Is. Agreed.
is. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I just want to make a point to those for whom this conversation is relatively new, this depth, that masculinity, as you beautifully describe several places in the book, is an unfathomable expanse of possibility.
Yes.
We are humans. We are in a certain evolutionary stage as a species overall. Therefore, masculinity is showing up through us within our evolutionary stage, potential, embodiment, or lack of it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The term that I like to use is morphic field, which just means a pattern
Yes.
of influence or a groove in consciousness. And there is one morphic field for masculinity that expresses in an unbounded, infinite variety of ways. It looks specific to you at this time, which was different than you from 5 years ago, which was different than humanity from 100 years ago. So it's evolving as all of life is constantly changing and evolving, but it's also singular. There's one thread. And when we drop into our hearts and there's a natural recognition that happens, that's it. One of the challenges that I've run into around masculinity at Integral, yeah, is people, we all want to know, well, give me the new picture of what is this masculine like describe it. And one of the issues is that whenever I say these are the qualities, this is the picture, that becomes a new form of a social dogma around what masculinity is and is not, that is fixed in some ways.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we need a more fluid experience of masculinity, saying not whatever you say is masculine goes, but whatever you recognize when you're dropped in, that's it. And that's where the trustable place is.
Yes, beautiful, Matt. Whatever you find when you're, whatever the trustable place is whatever you find when you drop into you, not
Yes.
the map.
Right.
I appreciated that several places in the book when after you've gone through like 3 or 4 or 5 different diagrams, and you're like, the map is, I'm paraphrasing here, the map is not the territory here. If you're at this point in the book, don't make this another dogma, as you say here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful. Okay, so this book is the second of 4 that you are in the midst of coming out with, yes?
Yes.
Okay. This book is, its entire focus is the warrior archetype, as you just laid it out, a morphic field.
Hmm.
Okay. I want to read something here from the book where you're setting up what this book is going to be about. In your first book, it was all about the magician archetype. The magician aligns his genius, imagination, and willpower to channel the creative energies of the cosmos.
Hmm.
The warrior acts with discipline and integrity for the sake of truth. And I really appreciated as an author also how you did this. You then went and you gave one line for each of the upcoming books, the third and the fourth. The third is the lover. The lover delights in pleasure, embodies the emotions, and grows through relationships.
Hmm.
And the king is the sovereign presence that offers his blessings to the realm. Each of these 4 archetypes utilizes his own distinct wisdom and tools to create sacred space and access the center. When these 4 roles have been initiated and are operating in balance in the man's psyche, then a man's soul self is able to flourish at the center. Matt, say more about this. the soul self flourishing at the center.
Okay. When we ask the question, who are you? There are many possible ways to answer that. I can answer from my egoic personality. I can answer very, very broadly and say, I am consciousness, I am all that is. In between those two, there is a trans-egoic essence that is original to each person. There is an aspect of me that was me before I was born, that will be me after I die, and that knows my path in this life. That's a very simple way of saying my soul self.
Okay.
The soul self is not who I think I am. It's who my heart is.
Okay. And so is there a place where the soul self is not always flourishing?
I love this question. Yeah.
I'm literally just I'm taking
Yeah.
what you're saying about like this is my essence before I was born, after I die. How is there a way that the soul self is not full and whole?
Yeah, no, I'm with you actually. I think that my perspective on the soul self is that the soul self is doesn't really participate in the suffering or occlusion of this world in the way that we in human form do. The question is, am I aligned and cooperating with my soul self? We come into this life and sometimes our trauma, our life circumstances prevent us from finding, oh, this is really me and this is what I'm here to do. And then at a certain point, like through this archetypal initiation, we can find that, oh, here's who I am, who I came here to be. And it's not the full path, but I'm in my process and it's unfolding and there's a rightness to that. That's what I mean.
Beautiful. Beautiful. A question on this. Just from what you just said, the soul self doesn't participate, from your perspective, the soul self doesn't participate in what we know as suffering. Is the soul self beyond polarity, such that is the soul self, because it does not participate in suffering, it also does not participate in bliss and ecstasy and release? Or is that not?
Yeah, I do think that there is some amount, because the soul self is individuated from the source. There is a disconnect that the soul makes, which is its own form of suffering. But I think that that looks different from what most humans experience as suffering. You know, the mystics like St. John of the Cross talking about the dark night of the soul, he's probably connected to the soul level suffering and that yearning for union with God.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
that's the level that the soul experiences disconnect on.
I see. Got it. So I'm just thinking out loud here, that would correlate to how I use the word shadow and where I do the shadow work.
Absolutely.
With it's not all the subconscious levels and unconscious levels. It's the core schism or split
Yeah.
of continuity. Okay.
Of course, gives them a split of continuity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree with that.
Okay, cool. Next attempt to transmit from the book here, I really found this very intriguing and exciting that someone else is writing about this. You say, thus, there is no singular or universal masculine trait. There's only instances, or specific instances of polarity. Definition of masculinity only happens contextually. And yet, my heart feels and recognizes the masculine, beyond theories and concepts, in the immediacy of the experience. Whatever traits or context the masculine is wearing in that moment is the true masculine here and now. This is so important, especially for men who, when they have an experience that is not being driven by their inner violence or their inner victim, they don't have a word for it. They will grope and grasp to make sense and label what's happening. And what you're describing is here, however much you grasp and reach for understanding and labeling it is just an after effect. It is happening.
Yes. Right.
In your work with men, how do you meet this when you, it's kind of a little bit of a too generic way, but let me know if I'm understandable in my question here. When you're working with men and you observe in them the habituated reaction to go to try to look for and identify and name something that's happening in real time, and how do you get them to realize that that's not useful?
That's a great question. For my work, which is largely inspired by the work that I've done with you, it's about feeling. When we come out of our heads and into our heart, into our body, and feel from a place of openness, from a place of curiosity, that creates the opportunity for my, ungraspable, unnameable experience to be received in my system, and then eventually for my system to start to make sense out of what is this experience that I'm having. And so it's also helpful to go through the practice of understanding what is the programming that I've received around masculinity. I received programming that my job as a man was to be strong, to not show grief or soft emotions, right? So that's programming that I got when I was a little boy. When I can start to speak to that and then investigate it and see, does that really feel true? Then that helps to get rid of some of the layers that stand in between me and my authentic experience.
Right, right, right. Get underneath the layers between me and my authentic experience. Let me just read something else here. I'm inspired. I know the masculine when I feel him. This is directly from your book. I know the masculine when I feel him. The morphic field of masculinity is simultaneously singular and infinitely diverse. This field manifests uniquely within each individual and is continuously evolving through individuals, cultures, and humanity. Question that arose for me when reading this. Do further or later stages of evolution give me access to more feeling, to more organic, spontaneous, and true expressions of the masculine as me?
Yes. In my experience, yes. Each each level of development that we move through, each structure of consciousness transcends and includes the one that comes prior. So the further we develop, the broader the vista of what becomes available and the deeper the experience, because it includes everything that came before: traditional masculinity, modern masculinity, postmodern masculinity. Integral can reach down into all of these levels. And it has a broader range of what it could potentially traverse.
So that would include, like you say, integral's ability to reach down. That would include deeper layers of authentic feeling or experience.
I'm not sure that it seems like a yes, but I imagine that that feeling is feeling on some level. Like when I'm in my heart feeling, there's not more, there's not less, it just is.
Right. Yes, yes. In the moment, it just is.
Mhm.
In these later stages, not states, in these later structures,
Hmm.
yes, these later structures of consciousness that a person is, by definition of stage, stable in and is living from there, meeting life, meeting challenges, having dreams,
Hmm.
having those dreams fail, having those dreams succeed, whatever. I would, my guess is, and I hear, I don't know if we know the answer to this, but the feeling experience arises from a more accessible or more accessed, a wider list of ingredients from
Yeah.
those deeper places. So someone gives me news that breaks my heart. I'm in the deep process of grief, and because I'm at a later stage, whatever later means, in other words, I'm not afraid of grieving and losing that, what I'm grieving over. It may be that my waves of grief that move through my body and through my life are tapping into something racial that goes far back than my own memory of things or my parents' memories of things. Like, this is what I want to throw at your feet. Like, does this feel resonant to you, or is there
Absolutely.
something off here?
Yeah, no, as you're saying this, I'm really resonating with it.
Okay.
The journey of the self sense through the worldviews and the structures of consciousness, we begin kind of the self is undifferentiated, blended with reality.
Right.
And then we're kind of working towards our individual egoic self. At first, we're kind of blended with the mother figure and we're blended with our social group. And eventually, at the modern level, like, hey, I think, therefore I am. There's an individual me here. And then that me starts to reintegrate back into my ethnic group, reintegrate back into humanity, into life and the world, and into the cosmos. And so the further that self sense progresses, so to speak, wider that tapestry of experience gets to be. And so, ancestral, racial, planetary, ecological, like all of these aspects of how we grieve might start to come on board.
Right. Right. Okay. Matt, that's really good. You articulating that has puts a bit more substance to just these inclinations or impressions that I've had that I really haven't known what's really happening here, because there have been times when the same quote trigger in my life showed up, a couple of years later, the same piece of grief, but now if I can, it's like richer, deeper, and wider that I'm grieving.
Hmm.
Not, it's less personal, even though it ouches more.
Yes. Hmm. Hurts more, matters less. That's a Ken Wilber phrase.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, in the heart work I do, I say stop making things personally and start making everything intimate.
Yes,
Yes.
completely.
Yeah,
Hmm.
beautiful. Okay, great. So you also say in the book, it's no longer, you're speaking about this second wave now,
Okay.
the
Hmm.
post mythopoetics. It's no longer a man's job to fight, to rule, and to provide. These roles have been passed down to men since the birth of Western civilization, but they no longer hold true today. So, my first question about this is, are men now able to discover what is true for them while their lifelong roles, their identification roles are dissolving at the same time? Or is this first step? You got to let it go. And then the second step gradually arises with the discovery of my new role, my new context that I'm defining for myself by what feels right.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a simple answer to that.
Okay.
There definitely needs to be a disillusion phase.
Mm.
And we find that for most men, an identity crisis. Like, I thought all this was real and it's not. Oh my God. But then there's a recursive process of of redefining. We get the next step, and then we have to integrate it, and then we're continuing to work it over again and again.
Mm.
And I find, like, for me, we can say, all right, it's not universally men's job to rule, but where does rulership feel authentic and where
Yes.
does it not? Where does providing, where is that life affirming? Where is that a really good thing for me to be a provider? And where is it not? Where is that? And so there's like this ongoing process of redefining, rediscovering, and then integrating.
Beautiful. Man, I want to attempt to articulate something and just interrupt me, pipe in here whenever you feel. I want to look at the old role, one of the three that you just mentioned there in the book, about providing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a man's role to provide, despite the intense amount of dogma around this, and even using this to enslave men in their own psyches from more of their freedom. There is something, and this is what I want to attempt to articulate, genuine about providing vis-a-vis the masculine.
Yes.
In my writing in the past about masculinity, providing is a way for a man in the male psyche to participate in a process that very, very unconsciously, even archetypally, he feels completely engulfed by, and he's just one speck in a huge array of stars. By providing by definition is contributing in a supportive or nurturing or nourishing way to life happening naturally or well, whether it's healing or it's providing income to a family or it's preventing more environmental disaster, whatever, providing. It's a way deep in the male psyche, by definition of his anatomy, by definition of what men have been relegated to for the last 10,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way for him to reach, to not to touch, but to reach for the noumenal. So that's pure. That's gorgeous in a man. The problem I find in men who are genuine providers, like that is the genuine part of their map. And because it's part of their natural birth wiring, it's also an essential, fundamental component of their realization. Because it's a part of who they are. That providing can be used against men, and we have learned to use that against ourselves. Oh, I'm just always giving away to everything. Oh, and we're like losing the gold of what we're actually doing. So you're smiling. So tell me what you want to share about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So where I go with this, for any of these traits, there's an archetypal quality to it, and providing runs really, really deep. And so the Jungian process of individuation is about finding me in relationship with the archetypes. I'm my own individual. And prior to that, the archetypes are just kind of unconscious patterns that take over my system and run my show. So the provider masculine might just be like running my show. What we want is to individuate from that aspect of the archetype to find me. And then there's choice here. I can step into the provider role when it feels good, when it's beneficial, when it's helpful. But I don't have to unconsciously run that program. That's ideally where we want to get to.
Got it. So take us through that. Let's say a man is at that place. He's healed any distortions in his past providing. He now has full access to his inner provider. But he's also not using it as a defense or as a compensation for something else. Okay. When he is providing, does he just go off duty in his mind? Or is he able to like maintain, like, what does that look like if a man is there. So providing as a kind of activity or an agency of the archetype is now happening through him.
Hmm.
What's that inner experience like?
For me, it's like this joyful play of
Ah,
like, here's this thing. And actually, like, I had to go through all the deconditioning of like why providing is ruining the world, like men trying to provide is ruining men, is ruining the world. I had to like get rid of all of that stuff and kind of come to terms with my role in it.
yep.
And now I get to reapproach it from this place of like, oh, what a fun experience of being a human. I get to be a provide. I get to like provide. I get to earn and then give. And there's something that feels so deep and right in that for me.
Exactly, exactly. I totally agree. Yeah, what I'm feeling from where you're speaking from in you is just it's a feeling of being like self-sexy.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
this is my virility and all of that. I would, Matt, but this brings up a question. Would other men experience it differently? Would they less be playful when they tap into their genuine provider and they're doing that cleanly and rightly? Could it become something else? Like, would their experience be of a different quality? Or generally, whenever a man is really free, as you're describing it, that play and curiosity will always kind of come up like that.
Mm, that's a great question. When you say really free, where I go with that is free to be hating providing, free to be angry about providing,
Yes,
free to be loving providing.
yes,
But at each point, I'm choosing it. That's the freedom. It's the
yeah,
freedom to choose. I could set this down if it no longer serves me.
right.
I'm not stuck in that role.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. And I just want to say something here that somewhere that we're of the same mindset and experience here, but maybe a lot of guys or women listening to this may not have this reference. What I'm hearing you saying and what I'm hearing me saying also assumes an understanding that being able to put it down when it doesn't feel right or pick it up when it does, this is not a flippant thing in a man. This is when it's like I would use the word more closely like truth. When it's true
Yeah. Hmm.
throughout me, not just a philosophical or like, oh, in the map of integral that I was just studying, this is the part where I'm supposed to pick up providing, and that means I'm going to be at a later stage of integral. Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm going to be a provider now. It's not.
Right.
It's the opposite of that. It's so
Right.
spontaneous. It's almost like we surprise ourselves. Oh,
Hmm.
I'm providing for the last 14 years. Okay, that's what I or 2 months or something.
Yeah, completely. And what you're speaking to of the intellectualization of the map
Hmm.
is a really prevalent trap that I
Yes.
have fallen into and that I see other people fallen into is, oh, here's this map with that's what it looks like to be at the top. Oh, I'm just going to put myself at the top.
Exactly.
This also applies to nonviolence. Is there's a lot of wishful
Hmm.
thinking around what peace is.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I've kind of boiled this down for myself. Actually, what do you think about this? I don't, I'm not as well thought and well studied or researched as you are here. I've learned that what a lot of people call peace is actually just the absence of the capacity for conflict.
Yes, which means avoidance.
Thank you. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yep. Avoidance.
Or passivity. Whatever, I'm just going to let it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And not participate, which is really, I'm not going to pay attention to what this is bringing up for me. I'm
Right.
going to make the outside, the thing that I'm just going to outside there that I'm just going to let happen that I'm not going to involve passively is like, nope, today's not the day for me to meet myself here.
Right, exactly.
You
Yep.
find you find the same?
Oh, completely.
Okay.
As I was going deep into this topic on this book, again and again, like as I was writing, again and again, I kept coming back to like, oh, I inherited a concept of peace that does not apply to this particular use. Peace does not mean total tranquility.
Yes.
There's one definition of the word which does, like the peaceful waters. It's like there's no ripple in the water. Okay, great.
Right.
But in our interrelational, intersubjective human experience, peace means I am not choosing to add violence, to add
Yes.
force to the conflict that is here.
Yes.
I'm
Beautiful.
showing up to meet it without creating further harm through it. That's peace.
Yes. Without contributing to the, yes. Just taking that in. Huh. My approach to peace is absolute, of course, absolutely consistent and resonant with that. It's a different emphasis. My view, my opinion is that a human being's genuine path of peace is to first understand that peace is a result. It's a resulting stage of meeting the inner places or parts of me that don't want peace and that are invested in remaining separate, remaining better than or less than or all of that.
Yes.
But in really heightened, conflictive situations, sometimes involving cultures against each other, what I'm talking about doesn't apply because this is of a different, this is of a different line of because in that kind of situation where there's two people really going at it and they're going to really cause harm to themselves or others or whatever, then your approach to peace, that's what's needed. Don't contribute to the harm or the violence that's already alive etherically here. Don't contribute to it. So like yours is more applicable to actual, de-escalating situations.
And I can only do that once I have engaged my internal process in the way that you are describing.
Really? Matt, you have I don't know, but I would guess that you would have a lot more life experience here than I do. Do you find that mediators, peace agents, that they have done a lot of this inner work themselves? Or is this kind of more their work in the world? And they're very good at it, they're very skillful, but they haven't done the inner work.
There's a wide range around mediators. Yeah.
Okay.
But I would say that the only trustable, like there's some amazing tools that have been developed by awesome humans that we can apply for situations of interpersonal or group conflict, right? The deeper human peace, like peace on earth type of peace, can only come when we get that in ourselves. It has to start here.
Yes.
And then whatever comes out is going to be a continuation of my own internal reckoning of finding these parts of my own self-cruelty, the parts of me that are violent, and meeting them with compassion, meeting them with kindness.
Beautiful, man. I have found that a lot of human beings are not ready to put down the right wrong. And if, meaning they're not ready
I'm
to.
still finding places in myself where I'm not ready for that.
Oh yeah, well that goes without saying because we're lifelong practitioners of this shit. But yes, yeah, totally. Okay, next thing that really intrigued me, I want to ask you to speak to it a bit more. So, utilizing the new tools, this is from the book, utilizing the new tools of spiritual technologies, healing modalities, and developmental resources, together with the courage and discipline of the warrior, we stand on the brink of profound transformation. We have an incredible opportunity today to be conscious co-creators of our value, conscious co-creators of our life's purpose, and of our fulfillment as men. I will find this not by adopting a culturally defined role, but by redefining masculinity within the wholeness of my being. It just strikes me here, Matt, because I know some or a lot of what you do for what the work you do and how you do it. Without a personal commitment to living this, to what you wrote there in your own Matt Stern life, that you couldn't actually be providing value to men. You could be giving them maps.
Sure.
You could be helping them here and there when they run into a rough patch, but sitting with you then becomes a man's experience of sitting with a more, whatever more is, embodied presence of this is what it feels like to be non-reactive, to be post first wave, to be able to control in a healthy, loving way his own energies within his own body.
Right. Embodiment is the key, is what you're speaking to.
Yes. What's your definition?
Embodiment in this context means like all of these concepts come down into my behavior, my ontology, how I experience myself. So we were talking about nonviolence, right? And this is exactly what I was saying is it's easy to have a concept of peace and nonviolence, but then getting real about how I navigate my internal landscape in a nonviolent way, that's embodiment. You know, it might be psychological, I might be working with parts or whatever, but when it comes down to how I show up when I'm in internal conflict, there's the embodiment piece right there. And then that embodiment becomes a transmission.
Yes.
When somebody sits with you, when somebody sits with me, and I've got that in my essence, in my presence, then they can start to tap into, oh, there's something different about the way that this person is showing up, and I can feel it, even if I can't quite name it.
Yes, yes, yes. That's key for people. I'm so, even after all these years of being in work with folks, I find myself, I just discover every day, I am so committed to finding new and better and easier and more accessible ways for more and more people to meet that place in them where they're not trusting themselves. They're not giving into the love. They're not forgiving. You know, they're backing away from their strong feelings or something. Like, so therefore, what you just said is so important in my heart, in my life, still. What are some of the ways you have found that really work for men? Of course, it's different for every man. It's, you know, subtly unique. But what have you found is effective at helping them go from, I recognize that in you, to embracing it or meeting the resistance or saying yes to that in themselves?
There is a container of a men's retreat, which I love. Because it requires us to really step outside of our regular reality. And then as participants, we're just kind of at the mercy. We're just showing up. We're not really sure what's going to happen in this container. If it's an initiatory retreat, we're going through an experience here.
Yes.
And we're going through that experience with other men who become our brothers. And what happens is they're in the circle, an experience like, let's say it's a process around anger.
Okay.
You know, we're on the warrior. We create a circle. We invite men one at a time to step into the circle and express their anger, whatever that looks like. When I see another man step into that circle and get vulnerable in releasing something that's been pent up for him, probably since childhood, oh, there, I'm feeling like it taps into this deep place that goes way, way back to tribal village time of like, okay, we're armoring up to go fight for our survival here. And there's a recognition, this guy is stepping in. Now it's my turn. I want to step in. I want to do this work. And that field, it brings everybody in, and that's where the bond of brotherhood happens, and we feel safe enough to release the things that we don't normally have access to transform. That's where the initiation can take place. It's one of the ways.
Wow, Matt, that's really powerful for me personally. That you are articulating what the brotherhood bond is. It's, I mean, I've read just so many times, it's shared experience. But what is the experience? It's the surrendering to what is true in me and moving through me.
Yes.
Surrendering to that. And that requires not an ego death, but a putting down the ego. And really, that's the surrender.
Right. Hmm. There's a vulnerability there. When I
Yeah.
see another man get vulnerable and do his work, it opens my heart.
I'm the same. I am the same. Beautiful, Matt. That's a beautiful, thank you very much.
Hmm.
Um, Let me read this. I really love this part. It just inspired me. My task, you write in the book, as I mature, is to individuate my sovereign self from the unconscious influences of archetypal energies. I do this by coming into my center, symbolically represented by the central point in the mandala. From my center, I am able then to open a channel to connect with these archetypes in an intentional way. This is known as developing the ego archetype axis. When accessed from a place of centeredness, the archetypes become unlimited sources of creativity, power, and energy in my life. This axis serves as a channel for engaging with the archetypal realm, allowing for a balanced and empowered expression of my identity and potential. Mike, this is just so powerful, Matt. This, to me, I want every man to hear this at least a couple times, enough to know if this sinks in for him or not.
Hmm.
My question for you, Matt, is this the way that it happens for all men? Because I know this axis, the ego archetype axis, it's not the only axis. There's
Hmm.
others that you fully articulate and explain, and not just explain, but invite us to explore ourselves in the book. But is this the way that it happens for everyone?
Mm. So I will say that this process that I'm describing here, which
Yeah.
is really, it got laid out by Carl Jung and then has been a few generations developed.
Yeah.
It's universal. So we all can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we choose to engage with the archetypes and symbolically connect with our center,
Mm-hmm.
um, not everybody is going to do that.
Okay. That's
And
good.
there are other developmental pathways. I could sit and meditate and open to the no self, to
Right.
Christ mind,
Right. Right.
and that's a beautiful pathway. And my intention with this work is to lay out what are the different pathways without saying this one's better than that one.
Mm-hmm. Right. Great. That's the real answer to my first question. 400 pages, Matt. It has to be 400 pages. You gotta lay out all these paths for because men are different. We're just different.
Yeah, we're different. It's been one of my challenges when I was first getting into men's work. I was trying to find teachers or organizations that I jived with. And my challenge was they said, this is the path, or this is the picture of the realized man.
Oh,
And there were ways where I was like, yeah, what they're speaking to is real, but it's not my path, or it's not my picture. And there was like this dissonance that I held for a long time where I was like, I respect these people.
sure.
I can see that they're doing good work, but it doesn't feel right for me. And what is that? What is that thing about men's work?
Yes.
And so where I landed on is I just have to open it up. There is no path that's the one right path. There is no one right picture.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that these individual pictures are wrong. It's
Right.
just like for that person, for David Data, his picture of masculinity is this one, and it's great. It works for him
Oh
and it
yeah.
helps a lot of men.
A lot. Yep.
For whoever else, for the Mankind Project, their picture of the realized man is this, and it works for them. Like, great.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a whole wonderful topic about this. You know what? As you're saying this, Matt, I'm realizing I got excited reading these parts of the book where you talk about like men's work. You didn't say this, but my words. Men's work has reached a critical threshold. It itself needs to evolve.
Yes, it does. Completely agree.
On that note, Matt, do you feel or sense that most of the men in men's work know this or don't know this? Feel this or don't
Most of
feel
them.
this?
There are some men who do get this, and there are some men who do not. And I actually think that I don't want to say that all men's work has to evolve. Because humans exist upon a developmental ladder, there's going to be different kinds of men's work which is developmentally appropriate for where different people are at, for
Right.
where different subcultures are at. So the opportunity here is for the next layer, the next more advanced, more holistic, more embracing layer of integral to come on board.
And when you're saying here, you're speaking specifically about formations and structures and organizations of men's work.
Yeah, and specific teachers as well.
Right. Right.
Yeah. hmm
Okay.
So there are some people who are either intentionally like have studied integral theory and they're like integral is the way, let's like incorporate men's work, or there are some people who just naturally like whether we have studied it or not, it's a natural universal progression that we get to. They start to arrive at that place and you can hear people talking about the regenerative masculine. Nothing to do with integral theory, but that it's the same core experience that they're speaking to.
So you wrote your first book a couple years after finding Integral. You said 4.5 years
I
ago.
did. hmm
So your term, I love the organic masculine. Would you say that's in the same camp?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Very intentionally so. The organic masculine for me is life affirming masculinity. And it's not one picture, it's anything that follows that trait. If it's life creates the conditions that are conducive to life. Masculinity in service to life, my term for that is the organic masculine.
Beautiful. That's extremely powerful for a lot of guys. I'm just thinking of some men that I know that them just taking that idea in would start to bring tears.
Yeah, it's profound.
It's profound because it gives a lot of guys hope that the damage that they've done throughout their life, they are redeemable.
Yes. To put it another way, if from your spiritual perspective, you believe that the entire universe, the cosmos, is sacred. You know, Buddhists call this sacred outlook. Then that has to include masculinity and the feminine. You cannot say, I live in a sacred universe, but patriarchy and men are wrong. You, the idea is to find a framework that's comprehensive enough to explain how the wounding and wounded masculine exists within the sacred.
And once a person finds that framework, you say, what does that do? Finding that framework, what does, almost mechanically, what does that give the person in
Trust.
their, okay, trust.
Yeah. At the very beginning of chapter 1 in this book, I have a quote from Chogyam Trungpa. He says, the path of the warrior is about not being afraid of yourself. It's about trusting in your own innate goodness. He calls it basic sanity.
Yes. Love that. That's what I was pointing to when I was trying to minutely articulate the provider. That's what it's reaching for. It's reaching, oh, I'm a part of this whole massive, sacred, unfathomable flow. So it gives a man trust or faith in himself.
Right.
Okay. You know, and just reflecting out loud, some men, their path of transformation means, because of how they're wired, they have to find trust or faith in life first, and then they rediscover faith in themselves. But other men are the opposite. We have to do it ourselves, redeem and forgive and all that. And then now, by definition, we're looking out upon life and going, this whole thing is a sacred mandala, constant, there's nothing wrong here.
Right. Yeah. However you get there, but there is this step into the sacredness of self and world that we take.
And that's huge. I'm just going to insert something here. For me, it's absolutely huge because as males, we are born with an anatomically different body than that which birthed us, and that which we feed from in the first few months or years of life. That differentiation registers at some point after the preverbal stage. And that differentiation, along with all the other stuff where the mother's unconscious about, can really hook a man into the message that I am different than life happening. I am different than what's happening inside of me. This is not right, or this is off, or I need to adjust, or I need, like you say, I need to be this way.
Or I don't belong here.
I don't belong. Yes. I don't belong here in the world. I don't belong in my body. Right. Whatever it is. Yes.
Yeah. And so the experience is a homecoming.
Yes.
I found my place. And that place symbolically is the center. I'm here.
I know you've experienced this. I have many times when a person right in front of us touches their center.
Yeah.
Experientially. It's like the intensity of the sacredness of life.
Yep.
Here's a question that I want to bring to you. It's been part of my teaching in the past, but I don't think I've ever found an opportunity to talk about this with another. Actually, yeah, let me give the whole background of this for everyone listening and watching here.
Right.
So in the book, you say, some of us will undertake the transition to the self. This is the capital S self, which if I'm not mistaken, Matt, you map the capital S self as after the soul self.
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. Some of us will undertake this transition to the self and true elderhood. In order to make this transition, I must fill out as much of my adult soul self as possible. When I have a thriving, balanced soul psyche for my foundation, then the capital S self naturally emerges as I mature. Just as the transition of my sovereign center goes from my ego to my soul self requires a dark night of the soul, a crisis, etc. So the transition to the capital S self at center requires my soul to relinquish control and come into service. This is not accomplished by wishful thinking in my conceptual mind. It is a decision that is made transcognitively in the seat of my heart and which is accomplished via initiation. You say further here, for many, the soul will not choose this initiation in this lifetime, and that is part of the greater perfection. This transition is ideally facilitated by the support of one's community. With elders to guide me through in each initiation, I am supported to make the journey safely. So we each have our unique path to a universal peak. And my question, just as further exploring this, the path, what I've come to and what I have shared with others, is the path that an individual takes to reach a certain, as you say, an initiatory new stability. The path that I took to get there and how much of me was included in that to reach that will determine the reach, the scope, and the depth of the amount of realization and embodiment. Do you find that? Or is it more that when someone does this, this is the qualities vibrationally and developmentally that a person is going to land in?
The more of you that you make available for the transformation determines how much you fill out into that next layer. That's
Yeah. Yes.
point one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, I agree. It's not a binary flip of the switch. It's there is like a 51% tipping point, I feel like, of like, oh, now I get this new place and I'm getting stable footing here and I'm filling out into this new experience of being. And that 51% tipping point is like the scary edge of I have to let go of my old identity, my old mode of control, the way that I did my reality for the next more expansive center point to take hold in my
Right.
system.
Right. Beautiful. And I'm just inspired here again to speak to the audience listening to this. What we're speaking about here, the path that leads us to this kinds of sometimes spontaneous initiatory breakthroughs or break opens, these are not controllable things.
Correct.
This is living our life day in, day out, doing the mundane work every day to reach ourselves here. And then when it happens, like the point you make is really critical. The support of a community, the support of an elder, and the elder doesn't mean age. Elder
Correct.
means someone who's more embodied and who is truly has released enough of their ego that they are truly in service to this kind of experience in others relative to how they naturally go through it. That when it happens in and through a person, the amount of thoroughness that a person brought through to their path will determine how much is realized. Not how much like content, but how much of them is then surrendered.
Yeah.
It's like how thorough is the transmutative eraser.
Totally. Yes.
Okay,
Totally.
cool.
So this is the wisdom of life moving through us. Life moves like the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. That type of transformation. Caterpillar doesn't know ahead of time. It has no concept probably of butterfly nature. But caterpillar is living its life, and at a certain point the caterpillar dies, and then a new life is formed. Humans go through this archetypally, psychologically,
Yep.
soul energy wise, like not in physical body form, but at the meaning level, the symbolic level. We go through this. And if other people have gone through it before, it makes the transition easier instead of figuring it out by yourself and freaking out along the way because holy shit, it feels like I'm dying here.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah, totally. Sometimes someone can say, you're going to be okay. I've been through this before. And oh, that helps so much, right? Just that.
This is part of the process.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to bring this back to here to warriorship. You write in the book, the first task of the warrior is to bring me into integrity. And my entry into the archetype begins with discomfort. I'm intentionally mashing up two things you said at different places in the book
Yeah.
to bring them together. And what would you say to that?
Yes and yes.
I'll say this again for everyone. The first
Hmm.
task of the warrior is to bring me into integrity. My entry into the warrior archetype in myself, in my life, begins with discomfort. This is not an easy archetype, you write.
Hmm. One thing that you shared with me in the years that we've worked together, the very first filter that my personality uses is, what do I already know? That's what I'm going to choose for. That's safe, that's comfortable, it's the known quantity. That's what I'm going to go for. The warrior archetype requires us to get out of that choosing mechanism, which feels discomforting at the beginning, terrifying sometimes. A lot of different experiences can come up, but the first feeling of getting out of your comfort zone is discomfort. Mhm. So that's the felt sense. And what the warrior wants to do first is to make you integrous
Yes. What does that
so
mean in
that
this context? Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, sorry.
what I say I'm going to do is what I do. That's the first definition that a lot of men's work uses. You say you're going to do something and then you follow through and do it. But integrous means thoughts, speech, actions across all the different relationships and ways that I engage with my life. I am showing up in the way that I want to show up. Doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect. Integrity is a process, it's not a goal. The process of integrity means I'm not letting things slip through. I'm not saying, well, that's good enough. I'm going to go have fun now. I'm actually caring about my life, about the ways that I show up.
Yes. You write further here. On one hand, we need warriors in the world, and on the other, warriors are causing great harm. While the warrior can be joyful, even that can slip into fundamentalism or bloodlust. Engaging with the warrior is like learning to work with fire. It's a bright and powerful energy. When guided properly, it can accomplish great work, but it demands respect. Without skillful use, the warrior can burn us or cause a blaze to level whole nations. But the warrior is universal. Everyone has a warrior within them. And therefore, we must be willing to roll up our sleeves and welcome the discomfort of exploring this dynamic archetype. And then you say something that really, I was so just excited to read this. In my opinion, the warrior is the most important archetype in men's work today. Further, warrior initiation is not manhood initiation. This is a major misunderstanding throughout contemporary men's work. Many men's retreats claim to be creating mature men when in actuality they are awakening archetypal warriors. And I'm just inserting here. In other words, they're awakening the archetypal warrior within the man, honestly and fully, but the rest of the human man is not integrated with that yet.
Right.
And then you say here, initiation into warriorhood is a powerful and beautiful thing. But by claiming, quote, this is what it means to be a man, men's work as a movement has confused its members, alarmed postmodernists and feminists alike, and stunted the organizations whose stated aim is to bring realized men into the world. This is such a powerful, important point, Matt. Selfishly, I want you to take this tiny little excerpt from your book and make this a whole thing that you publicize and get out there and start a dialogue and more dialogue with people, with guys in the men's work, the men who are administering or managing organizations that hold men's work, to get this conversation more voluminous.
Yes. Thank you. I'm glad it lands for you because that felt like one of the most important. Like when I was sitting down to write the Book of the Warrior, I was like, I have to tackle this point.
Yes.
And in that sense, this is an advanced book for individuals, but part of my audience and who I'm speaking to is people who facilitate men's work.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Part of my
I love
desire
it.
here is for this book, like people who are leading, guiding, coaching, whatever, men's work,
Hmm.
read it. You don't have to do the Matt Sturm version, but get the concepts, work it through, translate it to your own system.
Yes.
'Cause there's a new layer of dialogue that has never, as far as I could tell, happened yet
Hmm.
around men's work that's in
Yes.
this book.
Yes.
So take it, work it through, disagree with parts, that's fine, but find your version of it as a leader and bring that out into the world.
Yes. Beautiful. Yes. Matt, anything else you want to say here? Share, ask, challenge
Hmm.
those who are listening.
Yeah, there's another whole section of this book around non-ejaculatory orgasm.
Yes.
And I just want to speak to that a little bit.
Great.
Because partly I went back and forth with my editor a bunch around, hey, you've got a really long book here. Does this belong, like these practices around non-ejaculatory orgasm, does it belong here? Or can
Hmm.
you make this another book like Warrior Part B? So, just to speak to that for a little bit, there's plenty of books and information out there on how to have non-ejaculatory orgasm as a man.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, that is framed as be a better lover, have better sex.
Exactly.
The reason why these practices are in this book is two reasons. Number one, when I was learning this, retraining my arousal and my nervous system,
Hmm.
it was warrior's work for me. It was disciplined practice day after day after day. And if I wasn't doing that type of practice, I don't think I would have gotten this. I would have
Hmm.
figured it out.
Hmm.
So it was my warrior.
Hmm.
But the second reason is the context. Learning how to have non ejaculatory orgasm in the context of becoming an integrated warrior is a completely different perspective than learning how to have better sex.
Yes.
And my point here is that men, we need to engage with our sexual drive, whether you get the orgasm practice or not. How our instinctual, inborn desire to spread the seed manifests in the world often carries an incredible amount of shadow.
Hmm.
It causes harm. So this is one of the places where we need to look to integrate in order to become that integrous warrior.
Hmm.
That's
Yes.
why the book is called Primal Drives. It's not just our violence, it's also our sexuality. These
Mm.
two like very strong fundamental forces.
Yes.
We need to come to terms with both of them.
Yes. Such an important context that you give here, Matt. For you, this is in this book because this was your path into the warrior personally.
Mhm.
Therefore, it can be for any other man who finds a similar challenge and call through meeting or evolving their sexuality from learned fear based violence sexually into embodied. Yes, yes, at first, as men, we learn control over the arousal, controller over the physical orgasm, but eventually the control lets go. And now it's like we're in service to through this incredible blessing of male virility, male sexuality.
Yeah, completely. And my term for this is erotic sovereignty.
Erotic sovereignty. The new eroticsovereignty.com, the new website from Matt Sturm, coming soon.
That is my working title for the Book of the Lover, actually.
Oh, yes.
Is erotic sovereignty. Yeah.
Yes. Such an important concept. This is not about better sex. This is not about more or better orgasms. This is about stopping the bullshit of being who you're not as men.
Right. And cleaning up the seduction, cleaning up the
Oh,
force, the way we push past people's boundaries, cleaning up the all the sexual situations that I put myself in that I feel bad about later,
yes, exactly.
right?
What was I thinking? That's the thing, you weren't.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah. The entire, and for those listening here, Matt's section on all the practices, and it's not just sexuality practices, it's also all the yoga series that you included there with
Hmm.
visuals, like of a man like doing the different poses and why we're doing this and what this brings about. And Matt, there are also several other big areas of the book that I didn't want to allocate 3.5 hours for this conversation. I thought but like the whole concept and reality that you bring in of the androgen is
Mm-hmm.
so important, and there is so much in this. And I hope your students and those who are following you, both now and in the future, those who have not met you yet, who end up studying your work, working with you, becoming colleagues with you, co-creating together, they really like mine this. They really like get the gems from this, even if they just take just the part about the sexuality out, or
Totally.
just the part about men's work, or just the part about the masculine feminine polarity, but androgyny is, as you say, the horizon. It's non-polarized.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's pre and beyond polarity. Like there's just so much in this. Really, just kudos, man. Like huge,
Thank you.
huge, a lot of. Yes, you're brilliant and all that, sure, but you really put, like, you really brought it yourself into this.
Hmm.
You know.
So I want to close with one of my dreams for this book, which is relevant for listeners, um, which is that doesn't matter gender. You could do a men's group, or it could be mixed, or even a women's group, like whatever.
Hmm.
But to have a group of people where you work through the book and talk through the topics together. Because I'm just giving my perspective of like really important things. Like I'm saying, hey, let's look at this place and this place and this place. Let's focus in here. And then I'm going to bring my perspective to it. That's how I hold this book. But your perspective and other people's perspectives are going to broaden out that context. And my dream is that people would form up a group of 5 friends and take a couple of months and meet together and go through the book.
Beautiful.
Here's what I liked. Here's what I didn't like. Oh, you got keyed in on this part. Whoa. And then that opens a whole conversation that I wouldn't normally have. That's my dream.
And like you say, I just want to really emphasize that this does not have to be with men only. This could be a male and female in a partnership.
Totally.
This could be two women who are working through and supporting each other in regaining their inner masculine sovereignty. It could be any two human beings. It does not have to be just men.
And in publishing my first book, the subtitle that I put was Integral and Archetypal Workbook for Men. And then after that book released, so many women have been so excited and interested and engaged in the book. I was blown away. I was like, I didn't think there would be anything for women in this, but there's a lot in there. And so the subtitle of this book, I changed it as Integral and Archetypal Masculinity Workbook.
Uh-huh.
Because what we're really doing here, all of us hold masculinity. We're trying to evolve masculinity together.
Exactly. That's it. Yes. For me, Matt, it's up to us. There is not some future higher stage. There is not some next developmental realization that's awaiting us as human beings, just sitting there waiting until we get to it. We are literally creating our next stages. Yes, there's grooves. Yes, there's the spiral and there's the stages,
Hmm.
but we are literally creating these experiences for ourselves that produce that shoot us into the next, or seep us into the next stage. We have to do this. It really is a workbook, Matt. Like, I totally,
Yep.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My nickname for this book is The Mountain. It was a mountain to write. It's a mountain to read.
Okay. Awesome. Matt, where can people get it?
PrimalDrivesBook.com. At the moment that you and I are recording this, it is not released, but it will come out on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble. It will be print book, ebook, any place that you would want to find a book. Just go there.
Great. Okay. So like within when roughly? January or
End
February?
of January.
End of January 2025. Great. So whenever you're listening to this, if it's before that time period, definitely primaldrivesbook.com. Okay. Great.
That's it.
Thanks for your time, Matt.
Pleasure, Adam. Thank you for joining us today for the Living Cosmos podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review and a rating on whatever podcast platform you use to access it. If you'd like to go deeper, I'd encourage you to head over to livingcosmos.com, where I have a whole host of free videos and resources, as well as whatever courses I'm offering today. This podcast is made possible by subscribers to my Patreon, Living Cosmos. You can head over there to become a member to access bonus material and content. Thanks again, and aloha.